Hello and welcome to Theta Plus Academy's lecture on High School 101. Today we're going to take a look at every academic step from middle school all the way to the first day of college. We'll discuss very briefly the differences between the ACT and the SAT, whether homeschool, private school, or public school is the route that would be best for you and your family to take. And we'll also take a look at scholarship strategies in order to obtain resources for college. Hello, my name is Dexter. I am the person that runs Theta Plus Academy. This is my wife, Victoria. She was a person that I kind of tricked and finagled my way into her heart in order for her to sign her life to me. And these are my three boys. They keep us busy whenever I'm not dealing with your children, possibly. And most of my career was spent in Fort Bend ISD. I worked for Tammy Edwards at Ridgepoint. I worked for Shirley Rose at Marshall and Ken Gragowski at Clements High School. So here's the ideal path that we all think about partaking in. We first start off in middle school and we work very hard. We learn some of the basic skills before we go into the content-heavy high school. Then we make a decision on whether or not we're going to go to a public high school, a homeschool, or a private school. Again, in this discourse, we will discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages of each one. And then we tackle that dreaded ACT and SAT in collaboration with your GPA. If you have below a 2.0, you're in trouble. If you have a 3.0 and above, you're in decent shape. I was somewhere right here in the middle, and we'll get to why that's an important fact later on. Then you make a decision on whether or not you're going to go to community college or go to a four-year university right away. Once again, community college is just like a first step. But you can go to a university after you get an associate's degree from community college, and you don't even have to get an associate's degree. You can just take some credits there and transfer later on. We're also going to discuss a little bit in detail on why financial aid is in its current state and how that has affected and changed some families' strategies when it comes to college. Then you graduate, and then you can enter Dexter and everybody else out there in the workforce. This is just a little gag. I don't think of my job as a ball and chain. It's just to put a little humor into it all. And that's really the ideal path. You go to middle school, you go to high school, you go to college, and then you get a job. Or we can be like Steve Jobs. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have the capabilities of quitting college and starting a company that'll one day be worth billions of dollars, but it's just highly improbable, and I'm more on the side of empowering yourself and putting yourself in a position that gives you more options and more opportunities and have all that control and power in the palm of your hands. And education is one surefire way that that can happen. So follow Dexter and Theta Plus on that journey, and come see me if you really aren't thinking about going to college, or if you think that you're not good enough to get in one, please come see me. All right, and this is the ideal path for a middle schooler. About 50% of the middle schoolers out there get about 2 credits of high school credit before they even set foot into a high school. These, by Texas law, are the things that are available for middle school students. We have Algebra 1, Geometry, English 1, and Health. Now, in some cases, you can get Spanish 2, or even get Spanish for Spanish speakers. Some schools offer that, some schools don't. But for sure, you should be able to test out for algebra or geometry if you really think that you can handle that type of rigor. But once again, if you don't, that's okay. This is just for those students who feel a little extra motivated, and there's nothing wrong with taking the regular path. So now we're going to clear up some confusion in the GPA understanding in Fort Bend ISD and many other school districts like that that have a GPA system that is above a 4.0. If your GPA system is above a 4.0 in your high school, it's what's known as a weighted scale system. All colleges are just going to look for a 4-point scale system, and if your school has it above a 4.0, it scales down for colleges to look at. For example, here in Fort Bend ISD in regular classes, an A gets you 5 grade points, a B gets you 4, C gets you 3, D 2, and F no credit. If you take an honors course, which is considered above regular classes, we call it pre-AP and AP, but in other school districts, you may call it something else. You may also hear it be called pre-IB. But here in Fort Bend, if you take any honors classes, you get 6 grade points for an A, 5 for a B, C gets you 4, D 3, and F no credit. And they do this on purpose in order to create a gap between students that take easier rigor than students that take a harder rigor. Down here is the legal jargon that allows a school to do that, but at most your honors classes can only be 1 point higher than the regular classes. So I know what some students are thinking, why don't I just take pre-AP instead of AP in order to boost my scale? It's a little bit easier than AP and I'll get the same grade points. And that is absolutely correct. However, colleges focus more on your coursework and then consider the GPA secondary. So I'll repeat that again. Colleges will look at what classes you took because to them, you can't fake the funk as far as what you took. And then they look at the GPA and make a decision on what your ranking is as far as your admissions are concerned. Now, in homeschool, the GPA means absolutely nothing, and here's why. For a homeschool student, the grades are turned in by parents. And if grades are turned in by parents, there is just too much leeway for subjectivity. So therefore, colleges do not use the GPA of a homeschool student to determine ranking. What they do use is the SAT or ACT score based upon their own individual ranking system for homeschool students. Before, all homeschool students used to be defaulted in their bottom 25%, but in 2015, Senate Bill 1543 made it so that way homeschool students were ranked based upon their SAT and ACT score. Now, I'm not here to promote or demerit homeschool. I've seen it work across the board. We just live in a country where we do have the liberty of how we want our children to be educated. However, I do have a word of caution for the families that decide homeschool in that choose an adjunct or a facilitator for your child that is competent in the content, that understands the psychological challenges based upon the pedagogy of your child. The main reason why is if you trust XYZ person who is not state certified and does not really know the content that well, you're stuck with people who are just going over workbooks and practice problems with your child, and that does not prepare you for the SAT and the ACT, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So if you do have any questions about homeschool or any adjunct facilitation, please feel free to contact me. I do run a homeschool facility, and I make sure that kids are still competitive with the general consensus of their peers that do go to a public or private school. So now we're going to talk about private schools, and we're going to debunk some of the myths that some people believe about private schools. One of the biggest myths is that some private schools guaranteed admission into Ivy League schools. That is 100% false. Some people believe that better private school means better chances of getting into choice college. Colleges watch private schools more than public schools. Teachers are better qualified than public school teachers. So I'm going to get into the 411 on what a private school is. Let's first start off by who accredits them. They're accredited by two major institutions. One is called Advanced ED, and one is called SACS, also known as the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. If they get these two approvals, then they can be an official private school entity that can issue a high school diploma. If you're a Catholic school, then you must be TCC approved, which means the Texas Catholic Conference has to approve your school. Now, why is a private school good for some and not for others? It really does depend on what you're looking for. There are some private schools that have a really, really good culture of learning. They have competent teachers, some of the best teachers that you could ever have. And then there are some private schools who it almost is better that you homeschool your child than to put them in front of that individual. Here's some facts about private schools. Colleges pay attention to your coursework and SAT as top priority. This is what puts you on the map more than anything else. A kid that goes to private school has access to more specialized counselors for college, and they spend twice as much more time on college prep than someone that goes to a public school. So that is definitely true, but not guaranteed. Again, it really depends on the private school that you go to. Private school is more about a culture preference. I know that in Kincaid, you have to wear a suit and tie, or you have to dress, quote unquote, like a prep. In Woodlands Christian Academy, they have a very, very strong, prestigious program. I know some teachers over there that teach literally on the rigor of college more than it is high school. And that correlation of preparation is probably what causes the numbers to be a little bit more elevated in a private school than a non-private school. However, that does not guarantee that your child will thrive in that environment. Again, I stand by what I believe in, which is the family unit has to decide together what is best for each individual student. Sometimes it's a no-brainer and it's easy to make a decision like this, and sometimes it's something you really got to think about. If a student thrives in one environment but does not thrive in another, you really have to get together with your family and make that type of decision. Again, in a private school, teachers are not required to be state certified. State certification is only guaranteed when you go to a public school. I'll repeat that again. If your student attends a public school, that does guarantee that the person facilitating knowledge is indeed state certified. Again, to conclude on this point, it really does depend on your family preference. Make sure this is something that you as a family work on a team to decide on whether or not you're going to go to private, public, or home school. Every public school district has different programs that are available at different high schools. Again, the best thing to do is go to your district website for details. This one's for Fort Bend, and this one's limited to the STEMs, but there is a huge list for business, for other trades and crafts. And once again, you should probably go to your district website for details on that. Over here, we see here at Clements, Dulles, Elkins, Hightower, Kempner, Ridge Point, and Travis High School pretty much have almost all the programs when it comes to engineering. For computer and maintenance and telecommunications, that's kind of limited to the Dulles location. And also engineering design and presentation, advanced engineering design and presentation is only at Dulles. So the TEC, or the Technical Education Center, is at Dulles for Fort Bend ISD. There's other things that are available in some of the schools, like being a firefighter, cosmetology. That's why you see some of those kids out there with a mannequin head and they're just like swinging the wigs around. You might also see culinary arts or agricultural coursework. Harmony schools, what is it? And so there's a lot of questions about the DeBakey School, the Harmony School. It is indeed a charter school. Is it better than a regular school? Once again, you and your family have to get together and decide what better is. But they do have goals for these centers. I highlighted them in yellow here. According to the Texas Education Code, charter schools are meant to improve student learning, increase the choice of learning, and this is an interesting one, create professional opportunities that will attract new teachers of public school systems. As a former teacher, I'll let you know that you get paid the same across the board in a public school, and if you work for a private school, you take a little bit of a pay cut of a pay that's already really below average. I was a science teacher, and people with science and math degrees generally will not stay in the field for too long. Hopefully, if you have a charter school where they create a favorable environment for math and science teachers, they will stick around for a longer period of time. That's just across the board. Once again, I'm not trying to say that as a science teacher, we are better or we're more important or smarter than all the other teachers. I'm just simply expressing the trends that you see. I do want to share this one thing that I do see this across the board, not just in Fort Bend ISD, but other schools as well, where They are in crisis mode for math and science teachers to stay. I have countless students right now as a tutor where they're in this dilemma simply because the district has no choice but to get substitutes. Here's another FYI for you. Substitutes are not certified teachers. They may go to the classroom, they may hand out a worksheet, they may even grade a paper, but they are not certified teachers. It's the same as having a substitute doctor. I'm not saying this because I show favoritism towards me and my fellow colleagues, but I do believe that it is imperative that if a student attends a public school, that they are in front of someone that is state certified. It's the best that we got right now. And as a professional that has taken the state certification for math, science, and social studies, I am an advocate to say that there is no comparison between a person that is certified and not certified in the subject matter that they're supposed to teach. Once again, if you are in that situation where your student is stuck with a substitute instead of a certified teacher, feel free to call me or contact me and we'll be able to kind of discuss that matter in more detail. Now, the debate of the SAT versus the ACT. I'm going to give you just like a 411 and a brief overview of both. The SAT is 230 minutes long. The ACT is about 215 minutes long. And I want you to notice something here, that you do get more time per question on the SAT than the ACT. The math is almost completely identical. The English and reading, very similar. Except on the ACT, there is a science portion, but they both have a writing portion. And yes, double yes, even though the writing portions are optional, please indeed take them. They will be counted for you when it comes to comparing your score to the general consensus. Here are the main differences, like I mentioned earlier, that the math is identical, the reading and editing is identical, and here is a plus for all students. There is no more vocab intensive questions. So all of those stacks of flashcards with vocab on them, you can now place into the recycling bin. They will have vocabulary words in the SAT. However, they are based upon you finding out what they mean based on context clues given in reading passages. One thing that the SAT will have is a pervasive argument, and the ACT will have a personal thesis discourse where you kind of have to explain a position that you come up with when you're given 3 different positions on a certain topic. So they're very similar when it comes to the writing, but not exactly. There are 2 different strategies in writing both. Again, if you apply what you've learned in high school and all your life, where you make an introduction and 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion, if you fall for the temptation of using that instinct, you will ultimately fail that portion of the test. So please, once again, if you have any questions in detail, feel free to contact me. I do run camps throughout the year. They are fairly inexpensive compared to everybody else, and I do take more time per student because that is just my instinct as a classroom teacher. So let's take a look at the scoring. Now, there is no real passing or failing. Your score is compared to the general consensus of everybody else that takes the test. But here are some numbers to compare when looking at Texas schools. Here at Rice, the bottom 25 percentile at Rice has a 1450 on the SAT and a 32 on the ACT. That is absolutely phenomenal. Their top 25% has a near perfect score for the SAT and a near perfect score for the 75 percentile. Let's take a look at University of Texas Austin. The average person that comes in is about a 1240 and 470, so somewhere in between that range. For the ACT score, it's between a 26 and 32, so you should be good if you get somewhere in that range. So at Baylor, it's just slightly lower. If you take a look at the SAT scores for Texas A&M, you'll see that they are kind of below everybody else. If you look across the nation, on average, it's about a 1000 something. You are considered a little bit above average if you make above a 1200. You are definitely considered below average if you're 900 and below. This is U of H, and U of H has ACT scores that range between 23 and 28 as far as getting in on the average consensus. And the SAT scores are somewhere between 1130 and 1310. And it's about the same as A&M or Baylor when it comes to the score range of who gets accepted and who doesn't. And just a little FYI, I indeed am an alumni of U of H, and I still get the phone calls because I don't know why they need more money. They just got a whole bunch of buildings. It's kind of interesting. I thought they got all the money when they took my tuition, but that's another part of another lecture. All right, so let's weed through Khan Academy and try to figure out what this whole spiel is. There's some good things and bad things about Khan Academy. Some of the questions are actual test questions for the SAT, and it is free. But mind you that the College Board and the SAT are working hand in hand. And you'll also notice that Khan Academy does not support ACT training or ACT questioning because the SAT and ACT are run by two different companies. Now, the interesting thing is when I went to school, the SAT was what it was all about. That was the only test for college admissions. Now they have the ACT. And the ACT started gaining more weight when colleges started realizing that the ACT was more comprehensive of what a high school student should know. And slowly but surely, the SAT went through constant modifications. If you realize this throughout the years, the ACT has changed themselves many times in the past decade to try to catch up to the ACT. The SAT is almost near identical to the ACT at this point, given that the ACT has a science section. And don't take that to the bank. It might change soon enough. Again, if you have any questions about the SAT or ACT content, or have any questions about how a family should strategize when preparing for the SAT or ACT, feel free to contact me. Why are these tests so hard? So if you notice, like, you might have that kid that gets their score, then immediately compares their score to their best friend, and then they will either feel extremely elated that they're better or extremely depressed that they're not. If you take a look at the ACT, you only have a minute per math question. There is no way that you can sit there and do every single question within a minute and solve for the solution of each. There is a pattern to it all, and it sounds simple enough to cross out two answer choices, but there are strategies where you can simply knock out all of them except for one. The regular coursework of the TEKS, and the TEKS are known as the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. It's what we're all about, baby. In a public school, all your teachers have to follow what the state has ordained them to teach and facilitate on the schedule on which they give them. But they don't embrace the consciousness of the SAT or the ACT, and that's why you see such a gap in the scores. One thing to also keep in mind is that to learn these strategies, it doesn't always work by giving a kid an 1,100-page book and telling them to compare their answers to the answers in the back of the book. Some kids learn that way, some kids do not. The problem is students perceive their intelligence based upon their comparison of score. Once again, as we conclude with the SAT, ACT, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about this. Is community college a failure? I think not. It's such a interesting thing that happened with financial aid. I was helping a student with financial aid. Now, within a certain tax bracket, you won't even qualify for 1 cent of financial aid until you're 24 years old. Now, we're talking about how 2 years ago, if I inputted the information in their FAFSA, they would have gotten a free ride and an EFC of 0. Your EFC is known as your expected family contribution in FAFSA. And if your EFC is 0, that means that the government will pay for school. Today, that's not so much. I think some of these policies have to do with our current situation financially as a nation, and they're simply just not giving that much money out in grants. So we take the option of community college, which indeed is not so bad for some families in their strategy. Mark Cuban once said that the best college to go to for your first 2 years is the cheapest. And, some people have mixed feelings about that. I, for one, just see success all over every single pathway. I'm not a person that looks at the past. I focus on the present situation and focus on building bridges towards the future. So community college, here's how it works. If you take community college and you want to transfer into a university later, then the credits will transfer, but your GPA does not, unless it's bad. So if you make A's and B's in community college, then it won't be held against you when you transfer. If you make a C or below, they will tag your GPA when you enter a university. That sounds kind of unfair, but that's just the current system of how it works with these universities. So once again, you kind of have to strategize and find out which course of action would be the best for you and your family. They used to have it to where if you got an associate's degree in a community college, that you would automatically be accepted to any Texas university. That program has fallen through. I just mentioned that now so that way I can keep people up to par or debunk some of the myths that might be going around now. Total during my college years, I've accumulated about $84,000 worth of scholarships. My wife was something similar to that, and we're going to do a comparison between my wife and I to show you how available scholarships really are. One of the reasons why I am so passionate about helping students is because of my motto. Dexter's motto goes like this: if a subpar intelligent person like myself can do it, then anyone can do it. I look at my students and I see nothing but better than me. And so I know without a shadow of a doubt that the potential is there. Scholly is an app that I recommend that families download in order to weed out the scholarship search. And Raise.me is a website in which I urge all high school students to download immediately. Raise.me starts a profile for you. And with everything you do, whether it be volunteer work, take an AP class, make a B in AP chemistry, it gets plugged into your account and you get financial credit with certain schools. Now, obviously, it's not even across the board, and some of your endeavors will be worth more to one school than the other. But this is like Chuck E. Cheese. You're getting tickets, and by the time that you graduate high school, however many tickets you've accumulated, you get to trade them in as cash towards your tuition at a school of your choosing that participates in this system. Some schools include Notre Dame. Georgia Tech has one, so join that as soon as possible. And then there's good old Google, which is what I used during the time, and I'm going to explain a system that I kind of use in order to get so many scholarships. Here's some of the key tips. You have to stick to the script. You have to stick to what the ramifications are of each individual scholarship. Staying organized is one of the key factors in making all of it work, because if you're going to keep on applying for scholarships, sometimes you might get it mixed up. I have done this before where I accidentally copied and pasted one scholarship letter for another scholarship, and you better believe I did not get those scholarships. And some of them I was a shoo-in, but I was not organized during that time. And so I had to develop a system of organization in order to accumulate all of that scholarship money. The little by little method is where you take every single scholarship seriously. So I took everyone seriously, whether or not it was a $25,000 scholarship or if it was a $250 scholarship. All of it was taken seriously by me. Also, you're going to have to develop salesmanship and keep lines of communications with the scholarship companies that you are going to apply for. And it's also good to know in and out the company, donor, or school that you are trying to obtain funds from. You might also want to check out angel investors. I have not done that yet, but there are plenty of people out there that are looking to mentor some young kid in some kind of craft, and as well as help them out. So this is a Dexter versus wife comparison of our scholarships when we went to school. I was an education major and science major as well. She was a mechanical engineering major. My grade point average was a 3.22 and hers was a 3.72. Towards this end of senior year, I caught senioritis and I did catch one D in my entire academic career. I graduated at the age of 28. My wife graduated at the age of 30. We were both married while in school with children, but I got more scholarships than she did. We kind of laugh about it. Actually, I laugh about it. She kind of cries a little bit. But We were able to get this while we were married, but the fact that we were married did not sway the decision for or against us when we applied for scholarships. I have a pretty unique system of how I approach scholarships, and if you have any questions about that system, feel free to contact me and we can discuss that matter in more detail. The sooner you are trained to organize, the better. I use Asana and I train my juniors and seniors to use this. Asana is an organization program that works very similar to Google Docs, but a lot of project managers use this in engineering firms, and I use it now to organize scholarship files. I encourage many students to download this app and start using it. Again, if you have any questions on how to use it, feel free to contact me anytime. So the struggle definitely is real, and this is my last part of the discourse, is that millennials are not the problem. Work together as a team with the family. The pathway to success evolves as time goes by, and it is rarely a linear pathway to success. You are not stupid, you are not below or worth less than another human being just because you take an alternate route or just because you face a challenge that someone else does not have to. Continue being a tenacious student of effort, because I can testify to you that effort is the difference between mediocrity and greatness. But please believe in yourself and really start to strategize the way you want to live your life and not compare yourself to everyone else. You can do this. Thank you so much for your time. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. My email is dexter@thetaplus.org. My phone number is 713-732-8252. And I do always quote this at the end of everything. You'll also hear it in my voicemail, that education of the mind without education of the heart is no education at all. So if you are a facilitator of knowledge or a teacher watching this, I hope that I inspired you to remember why you're sitting behind that lectern in the first place. I myself further this philosophy in saying that you can't reach a student's mind unless you touch a student's heart. And if you don't want to touch a student's heart, then you have no business messing with their mind. Thank you, God bless, and have a great day.